Welcome to CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town from the world's #1 poker community. Hey everyone, I am your host, Robbie Strazynski. Thank you so much for joining us on episode number 73 of CardsChat, the friendliest poker podcast in town. Today's guest is a prominent veteran member of the poker community who in recent years has become somewhat of a poker celebrity from his appearances in the chainsaw corner of Daniel Negreanu's WSOP vlogs. But who is the man behind the character? Why does he obsess so much about tournament structures? Did you know that he's got close to 400 tournament cashes and almost $4 million in career winnings? It's time to get to know Allen Kessler a little better. Allen, welcome to the CardsChat podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for making the time. Allen, you've been a staple in the poker community for a long time, but I think most of us, including even your big fans, we only kind of know you on a superficial level. So, you've been playing this game for ages. Can you tell us how you first caught the poker bug?
Well, I was in high school. I played a little bit, but then in college, there was a group of us that we would meet on we called it the Monday night game. We would watch Monday Night Football and play mixed games. We didn't play like normal mixed games. It was always high-low, but it was like L flop, for example. Like you'd have an L-shaped flop, or you'd have 7 cards, stud, replace 1 card on the river, things like that. And then you had to declare with a coin in your hand, either high was 1 coin, low was no coins, or 2 coins was both. So you could actually have nothing, but if you're the only one that declared low, you would win half the pot. It was kind of confusing. But anyway, I played that game we used to meet every Monday night. It wasn't that big of a stakes. You could win or lose a couple $100. And then the casinos opened in Atlantic City. I think that was probably around when they started having poker. You can look it up. I think it was around 1990 or so.
Right.
Anyway, I started going there on the weekends after my work because I actually had a job then.
What did you do?
I would play. I was a market research analyst.
Uh-huh.
So I would work Monday through Friday. I would go to the casinos Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, and then I would drive back to work on Monday. That exact pattern happened for over 10 years.
Wow. Wait, so 1 second. So, you said you were in college. So, what did you study? What did you think your career was going to be?
Well, I was always interested in numbers and business management. And marketing. So I had a dual major in marketing and management.
Uh-huh.
And then I got a job as a market research interviewer, paid like $4 an hour. I was in college. And the whole market research thing intrigued me. And then what happened was I was really good at that. And they made me like a supervisor where I would teach people how to do it and also listen with they had like clients that would come in and listen to make sure that the interviews were being conducted properly. Mm-hmm. So I was with a client, and I was only maybe like 19 or 20 years old, and I'm sitting with clients from like Procter & Gamble and Showtime and whatever.
Wow. And
making sure that these interviewers are doing it right. So anyway, I did that for a while, and when I finally graduated from college, they said, you have a really good aptitude for numbers. Why don't we put you in our data processing department? So I said, sure, I've never done that, but I'll try it. Anyway, I was phenomenal at that, obviously, mm-hmm. because I was, really good with numbers. And I eventually moved up through that department, and I was doing like programming for the surveys. So like, how the interviewer would see like the questions come up on the screen?
Right.
I would do the programming to make sure that they got the right questions. Like if somebody said no, they would go to this question. Someone said yes, they would do this question. And then I would also do the analysis at the end, where how many people said yes, how many were males, how many were females, et cetera, et cetera.
Interesting.
So I did that for a few years, and then one day I was at my friend's house watching the football game, and we just decided we'd look at the one ads just to see what was going on, and there was this position offered in Media, PA, which is like an hour from my house, but I had a weird feeling about it, so I decided to apply for it. And I went to this place, and it was a brand new company. They were just starting out. And, are you still there?
I'm here with you. Yeah, go ahead.
I got a weird message on my phone. Anyway, they were just starting out, and they offered me like double the salary I was making. And I said, fine, I'll go there. They had to teach me a brand new software. And I bought a house in that area. The whole, it was really interesting. And I really got into this data, the actual survey part of it more than the data processing part of it.
So one second, before you continue, you say it was about an hour from where you had been. Where were you living, in New York beforehand?
No, I was living in the suburbs of Philadelphia in Montgomery County. And this place was in Delaware County, which was a much, so I actually wound up buying a house that was in between both places.
And you grew up in that area?
Yeah, I grew up in Montgomery County, but I eventually moved to Delaware County. And this particular job I did very well at, and they made me a supervisor of an entire department. And this was the first time this had ever been done, is they would do a weekly survey of 1,000 people, and they would sell different people sections of the survey, but they would all share the demographics. So this had never been attempted before, but this was a brand new technology where, like, say you wanted to have 3 or 4 questions asked, it would cost you a fortune to do this survey, right? But with this program, which was called an omnibus research, everybody shared the demographics, and you could just buy 1 or 2 questions. It was never done before. So at the end of a given week, we might have 8 or 9 different clients that bought into this survey, and we would send them all the results. So I was the manager of this department. I had maybe 15 employees at the biggest point of this thing. We were doing 2 of these a week.
Do you feel like perhaps some of the skills that you honed, during that sort of job helped you when you were playing poker on the weekends?
Yeah, I did a little bit because, you think about numbers and odds and things like that. And, it was such a convenient thing because I would leave work on a Friday night and the casinos were comping me because back then the games at the casinos were unbelievable. Like you could walk into any casino in Atlantic City and they had games that paid 100% or more video poker, which is impossible to find now. But back then you could find that, and it was literally in each casino in Atlantic City at one point when I was going there. This was years ago, obviously, but obviously nobody has that anymore. And they had, different contests and promotions, and I really got into that. So I did that for probably that whole scenario between 10 and 15 years. And eventually there was this promotion where they were paying double jackpots. And it was like something went off in my mind that this is impossible. How can the casino afford to do this? But they were paying double jackpots between midnight and 6 a.m. So one weekend I go down like I normally do, and I start playing, and I wound up calling out of work for 11 days straight.
Oh, wow.
Because this thing was so profitable, and I never had found anything like that, seen anything like that in my life before. And there was, this whole revelation to me, like, wow, I've just made this ridiculous amount of money, more than I could make in like 2 years of my salary. And I was also playing poker at the time, 100-200 mix.
Wow.
Which was stud high-low and Omaha 8 or better.
And you weren't just playing against any, Johnny-come-latelys. You're playing against Phil Ivey, Cindy Violet, John Hennigan.
Yes, all those people. John Hennigan, Nick Frangos, which I don't know if he even plays anymore. But this was a 100-200 mix game. When I first started going, it was like 20-40 Omaha high limit, which that game kind of died out because it was a very boring game. Like the nut flush would win or the nut straight would win every time. But then somehow the Omaha high game at the Taj Mahal, it became 20-40 Omaha high-low. And then it went to 50-100, and eventually it got to 100-200. So at this 100-200, all of a sudden, a couple times people wanted to play stud 8, and they were starting another game. So eventually the two games merged, and we started playing Stud 8, Omaha 8. This was around maybe late 90s. And I'm playing 100, 200 mix, but I'm making, I don't know, $10, $15 an hour at my job. The whole thing didn't really correlate. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So I would leave the work, and I had a phenomenal job. I mean, I'm a manager of all these people, making like $50,000 a year, but the whole time I'm at work, I'm thinking, wow, I can win or lose in one pot what I'm making in a couple of weeks or a month, whatever.
Right.
So eventually, it got to me, and 1 week I just walked up to the president. I've been working there over 10 years, and I said, I decided I'm going to resign. I'll take a few weeks to train someone else on all the things that I do, and I'm going to resign. At that point, my sister, who's a super genius, she had started her own telephone company, and she asked me if I wanted to work for her part-time along with my other stuff. So I wound up working for her during the week part-time, and then still doing my casino stuff on the weekends.
Uh-huh.
So she was doing stuff. She was involved with toll-free numbers.
Oh, wow.
And she figured out, she was one of the first people to figure out that if a number spells something, it's way better than if it doesn't spell something, like
Right.
800 flat.
For sure.
So she was marketing these different telephone numbers, and I would basically look for numbers that spelled things. It was a very complicated thing, but she was the only one in the industry doing it at that point. Eventually, everybody caught on, and then there was 888 and 877 and all these other exchanges.
Sure.
But she was the original person, 800, 888. Those are the two biggest ones, and she was the original person to figure this out, and just she became a multimillionaire. But people think that she gave me money or that she bankrolled my poker, and that's farthest from the truth. I never received $1 from her, from my parents, from anybody. Every dollar that I have, I've either earned from poker or from gambling in casinos, or I used to bank my entire check for almost 15 years. So that money accumulated quite a bit because I didn't have any expenses.
For sure. So 1 second. So when you left work to officially do this, you were thinking, I'm going to be a poker pro or I'm going to be a professional gambler?
It was a kind of a combination. What happened was I was playing a lot at different properties, and then I won a trip to Las Vegas. This is close to around 2000, maybe 1998 or so. Mm-hmm. And the Las Vegas thing was just so intriguing to me. You could walk from casino to casino. They all had these amazing contests, and I started flying. Instead of going to Atlantic City every week, I would fly to Vegas on the weekends and come back it would be Thursday to Tuesday or Friday to whatever, to play in these different contests that they had. They had Baccarat tournaments and blackjack tournaments. I wasn't into poker at all, except for Omaha High-Low. They had some tournaments once in a while. So I was doing this back and forth, and I accumulated a massive number of miles. People couldn't believe I'm going back and forth to Las Vegas 2 or 3 times a month. And eventually I did this for a while, either flipping between Atlantic City and Las Vegas. But eventually I got the poker bug around, I went out for some World Series events in 2001. And you can look on my Hendon Mob. I think there was one time where I flew out in the morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, and I got to Las Vegas, and I went right into a $5,000 Omaha 8 event, having never played an Omaha 8 event in my life. And I cashed, and I think either Scotty Wynn or Phil Ivey won that event. But I went really deep in a $5,000 Omaha 8 event, and then I started playing other events. I saw the Chris Moneymaker thing. I said, well, I'll play a satellite for the main event. So I did that in I think it was 2004, and I won a seat into the main event.
Okay, so 1 second. Let's stop you right there because we're fast forwarding. I want to ask you a couple questions about those early years, though. You had played cash games, obviously, against Phil Ivey, against John Hennigan. what did you learn from them? And did you kind of realize at that point, hey, these folks are, the best in the world, or, or just the people who happen to be sitting across from you at a table?
No, I knew they were all really good players. But when I got to Las Vegas for this, I just basically on no sleep. I left my house at like 6 a.m. I got there. I played. I forget how many days it was. The whole thing is like a blur to me at this point. But I went really deep. I cashed in a $5,000 Omaha 8 event, and it was literally my first Omaha 8 event I'd ever played.
Wow. And that is your first cash, actually. I checked on your Hendon Mob. It's in May 2001. And you've got close to 400 career cashes. It's 8th all-time. $4 million almost in career winnings. But you had talked before about how you were playing cash games. At what point did you kind of decide to make the switch from being a cash game player to a tournament player?
All right, so I was going out to Vegas quite a bit for these different blackjack and baccarat tournaments and things. And at that point, the World Poker Tour took off, and they were offering events like almost every month, like every couple of weeks. They had one at Mirage, they had one at Mandalay Bay, they had 5 different series at Bellagio, and the series at Bellagio weren't like they have now. They were a complete series. They had all different mixed games, and you could stay like so. I would go out. And around 2004 or 2005, this was you would finish one event, and there would be another event starting, and then there would another one and another one, and eventually that led into the World Series. Mm-hmm. So around that time, I'd say around 2004 or 2005, it just all connected. And I told my sister, I'm going to stay out here. I'm going to buy a house. Mm-hmm. And one time I went out to Las Vegas. I think it was either 2004 or 2005 in that area. And I called my sister on the phone. I said, I'm going to come back. I'm going to get a moving truck. I'm going to move some stuff out to Vegas. I'm going to buy a house out here. And I've lived there ever since.
Wow. That's really cool. So once
it all connected. Like it was nothing like it is today. Like the Wynn hadn't even been built yet.
Sure.
The Venetian didn't offer tournaments like they do now. Mm-hmm. But it was basically all the MGM properties were doing WPT events, and then it all connected into the World Series.
Right.
And if you look at my Hendon Mob around like 2004 or 2005, I start playing like a regular series, like a regular schedule, and it just mushroomed.
Right.
And I started doing really well in No Limit without having any training or any knowledge of the game whatsoever. And I made final tables at the WPT. I won different events, whatever.
Yeah, that's definitely an incredible thing, almost uncanny, because, again, obviously you've got, the mathematical prowess, you've got your cash game skill and experience, but tournaments is kind of a different animal. Like, what sort of adjustments did you have to make? How did you learn? Did you study, or was it just,
No, I was just playing really tight, and I was, taking advantage of my image because people said I was super, super tight. Like Gavin Smith and Joe Seabach, they had a radio show at that point, and they had this
Poker Road.
This whole thing. Yeah, Poker Road, and they were making jokes about how tight I played, and then Gavin started calling me the chainsaw, like around 2006 or 2007, because I started traveling around playing the WPT events, and that happened at Foxwoods, where I made the final table at Foxwoods. He had that, like, he was saying I was cutting through the competition.
Right.
And he called me the chainsaw. And then they would make jokes about me on the show, and they would play the chainsaw, like, sound effect. Him and Ali Nejad and Joe Seabach. And that kind of took off. And then people would stop me, and they would say, "Oh, you're Chainsaw from the Poker Road Radio." And then all of a sudden, that show, like, died out, but the chainsaw thing stuck.
For sure. And you've definitely embraced that moniker. We said you're 8th place on the Hendon Mob currently, about 400 cashes. Number 1 right now is Miami John Cernuto. He's got, at the moment of recording, 563 results and counting. Do you have a goal to try to make it to the top of that list?
No, I haven't really even been playing much poker tournaments lately. I just, in the last 2 months, I played one tournament in Colorado. I came to Cherokee just now because I really like Cherokee, just the whole atmosphere of it and the loose playing style, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But like when I played that one event at Cherokee, I mean in Colorado, the other people were playing entire series in like Florida and Tunica, and I played one event during that. So people are like catching me and passing me. Like I think Ari Engel is going to wind up number one eventually. I don't know where he is on that list, but he has the most diligent schedule of anyone, and he's eventually going to pass everybody. That's my gut feeling on it. Like
I believe he's top 10, and he actually was I think episode number 36 that we recorded right here on CardsChat. So
I cut back on my schedule. It's just the travel grind and just the whole thing. And you really can't make that much money playing. Like today was a $400 PLO event. If I win the whole event, it might pay like $8,000 or $9,000. It's not going to affect anything. So it's just you kind of. And then the problem is if I want to play the bigger events in Vegas, like there's a 2,500 1 million, there's a 10,000 10 million, all these different things going on. Those players, there's no edge in that game. They're all top-notch players. They all know all the charts. They all, like it's just it's a zero-sum game. Like you're not going to unless you're like in the top really top echelon and put all that time in studying and all that. Those are not the events for me. I like World Series type events where there's mixed games, where I think I have an edge, where there's like reasonable buy-ins, where you have a large group mix of people. But the opposite is going on here. It's a little bit too low for me. I thought the actual like thing that I really like are like the $1,600, $1,700, $1 million guarantees. Like,
mm-hmm.
That's the reason I came here,
right?
Because I get to play for $1 million jackpot, $1 million tournament with an unbelievably soft field.
Right.
You wouldn't find that in Vegas, or you wouldn't find that anywhere. Like in Florida, when you go to Florida and play a $3,500 WPT, it's a tough tournament.
Yeah.
Like from day one, you have really, really skilled players. People say, "Oh, there's a lot of recreational players in Florida." Yeah, but there's a lot of people that are really, really good players in Florida, also in Vegas and California. So I like to scope out these places like Colorado or Choctaw or Cherokee, where I feel like I have a chance, to win something really big, and the buy-ins are reasonable.
It's very insightful because obviously part of being a good professional poker player is practicing good game selection. Obviously you pour through the tournament structures to make sure it's worthwhile. When you're looking through your Hendon mob, all of your caches, obviously the overwhelming majority of them have come in the United States. But I noticed that you also recorded some caches at the UK, the Bahamas, Germany, Australia, and the Czech Republic. Now, the thing is, because you're so particular, you're known for playing in tournaments that offer good structures, good value, but to go abroad obviously entails a lot of extra cost. So I'm wondering, what is it that made you decide, it's worth my while to travel overseas and play those specific events over the last 20 years?
Oh, yeah. Well, the main focus I had, that started around 2010. In 2010, the World Series was completely different than it is now. It wasn't all re-entry. It was one event a day, and I don't know how many, 40 events or so, whatever it was. Anyway, I was in the running for the most caches in the World Series, which is a prestigious thing. Like only one person every year can say, I had the most caches this year in the World Series.
Mm-hmm.
So I had an amazing World Series that year. I think I won like $500,000 or something. And every day I would play a different event and I would cash. Next event. And I wasn't really, how like today, like Sean Deeb and Jake Schwartz and Negreanu and all these people, like they're running from event to event to try to get, 20 caches or whatever it was. But I wasn't even concerned with how many caches I had. I was just taking it day by day, and I was playing whatever event suited me. And all of a sudden, people were telling me, you're in the running for the most caches in 2010. So then, around the last week or so of the World Series, I really thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it winds up I was tied with somebody with 9 caches, which was a major thing back then.
Sure.
They said, well, you can go to WSOP Europe in London, And if you get any cashes there, they count. I said, fine, I'll do it. So I went there, and I had a one or two cashes, whatever, and it winds up, if you look at the Hendon Mob, 2010, most number of cashes, that's me. I won it.
There you go.
I got cashes I needed in London, and then I really liked it because the players didn't know me there. They had a whole different style, and it was like I'm playing with a whole different group of people that don't know how to play against me. So years later, I would go to, I went to Germany. They had another one in Germany. Then they had the WSOP Europe at King's.
Right.
And King's Casino, I fell in love with that place. They had you can walk into, like, they have a whole free food area every day. The casino lays it out for you, like a complete buffet, like all different types of food. And they had mixed events, they had no limit events, they had Monster Stack, they had the WSOP main event. And I did that for like 3 or 4 years, where I was one of only like 3 or 4 people that would go there and stay there for 30 days straight.
Wow.
And it's a major commitment to go somewhere like that for 30 days straight. You got to pay for the airfare. The rooms are not cheap. They're not going to comp you rooms because it's it's WSOP Europe. There's no comps.
Of course.
So I did that until this past year. I didn't go this year because I was worried about the COVID restrictions.
Sure.
But yeah. I really enjoyed that place because when I said earlier about, I'm playing with people that don't know me, and I had a lot of success there. I went really deep in the main event. Mm-hmm. I made there was a PLO event where I kept advancing and advancing. It was televised, and I got to heads up, and I almost won a bracelet, but I came in second. I got coolered full house over full house to lose the bracelet. But it was just really intriguing to me. And then a couple of years ago, I decided that I was going to add WSOP, not the WSOP, the Aussie Millions, because I heard so much about that.
Right.
So I started going there. And the problem with that is it's such a commitment because you lose like 2 or 3 days just in the airline going back and forth. It's like 15 or 16 hours in flights each way.
Sure.
And then the time zones are different. And I did that 2 or 3 different times. And I really enjoyed that one. But it's just the travel got to me. And then I went every year until they stopped doing it.
Right.
And they didn't do it the last 2 years because of the COVID.
Sure. Well, again, I obviously took a deep dive and looked at your Hendon Mob, and I did notice, you get ribbed, about the winning and stuff, but you've got 15 outright tournament wins over your career, including a WSOP circuit ring. But I guess, it is fair to say you don't really have kind of like that signature moment, like a WPT title or WSOP bracelet, even though you've come very close on multiple occasions. Were you?
Yeah,
I just want to ask.
Close in bracelets, all the way back to 2005. I've been heads up for WSOP bracelets four times.
Right.
And lost all 4.
Right.
And,
so I want to ask you, like, if you were to win one, or a WPT title, or something like major, what would that mean to you?
I think the bracelet would mean more to me than the WPT title, because the WPT title is it just seems unattainable because you have to run so pure for 4 or 5 days, and those no limit events, and then at the end you have to be willing to the math involved, with shoving and calling ranges and all that, and you have to fade everything. And my luck in those things at the final tables, I've been at 4 or 5 final tables at WPTs, but my luck in those has just been horrendous. Like the one at Foxwoods that we talked about earlier, mm-hmm. I got my money in with Ace 10 against Ace 8, and I'm shaking my head. There's a famous video on YouTube about it. When all the cards are turned over, Ace 10 against Ace 8, all in, pre-flop, and the guy hits like 4, 5, 6, 7, runner, to beat me. And like I'm shaking my head. And that's happened to me so many different times. Like it happened to me at another one at the Bellagio, where in I think like 2007, where literally the all-in person won like 7 or 8 different times on ridiculous hands. Like
so would you say it's more of a relief than a sense of accomplishment almost? Because I mean, you've obviously gotten almost all the way to the winner's circle.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing major that I've ever won is there was how they do like a WSOP circuit championship at each stop.
Yes.
So there was one of those at Foxwoods, and I was there for all the other events, the mixed events or whatever, and I played the main event, and I managed to get through 520 something people and win the Foxwoods circuit main event, which is, they only have like 10 of those a year.
Sure.
So I won that, and I think that was around 200,000. But one of my second places, I won almost 300,000 against Frank Casella in the 10,000 stud 8.
Right.
So that's my biggest recorded win money-wise. But my biggest actual win is around 200,000 in the circuit championship at Foxwoods.
Got it. Well, besides the playing of tournaments, there's we mentioned your name, the Chainsaw. You told us how you got the nickname, and there's this kind of a known label that can get slapped on a tournament structure if it's Chainsaw approved or not. What exactly does that mean? What type of schedule is deserving of Chainsaw approval?
Well, that used to be on the MSPT structure. They were like a fledgling tournament series. They were getting numbers, but nothing spectacular. And one time he invited me to Baton Rouge to look at to play in one of their tournaments. So I went, and I said, to be honest with you, this structure is messed up. You're missing levels here, and I said, if you let me just write out something, I could fix this for you. And it'll still finish. They have to finish in 2 days. And he says, his name is Brian Milewski. He runs the MSPT.
Sure.
He said, as long as it finishes in 2 days, I'll be willing to try it out, and we'll see how it goes. So he put on his website, we now have Chainsaw approved structures. I redid the entire thing, and their numbers went off the charts. Like, they used that structure. This is before Big Blind Annie started, but they used the Chainsaw approved structure for probably 4 or 5 years, and that whole tour went from having very, very small fields, to having 1,000-person fields. It was, people would stop me at I was going to a lot of their stops, and they would stop me and they would say, "This is like the best structure I've ever played. You've done a phenomenal job. I come to these tournaments just because they're Chainsaw approved." And basically what it means is that you have play from the beginning through the end.
Uh-huh.
Like a lot of these tournaments, at the end, sometimes they'll have 20 big blind average. You can see that all the time.
Right.
So that means there's something wrong. Or they'll play too many levels in the beginning where they don't mean anything. And then by the time you get to like 500, 1,000, nobody has any chips. Mm-hmm. So it has something where you have play the entire tournament. That's Chainsaw approved. And you don't skip levels. You don't start too high, whatever. And the new WPT structure was almost Chainsaw approved. And then they decided they're going to just remove 3 levels, which is what happened recently.
Got it.
So
okay. Well, obviously, having a good structure is very important to you. And I know, obviously, you don't just, do so to be nitpicky, but you really believe that, it's important to give players good value in the tournament.
If you're gonna play in a tournament where at the end everybody only has 20 or 25 blind average, then it takes a lot of the play out of the tournament.
Right.
The play should be consistent throughout. The same with the mixed events. If you can find this thing from 2014 or 15. It says, Allen Kessler fixes mixed event structures with Jack Effel. And the structures were no good. I was complaining, on Twitter or whatever, and he said, if you can fix it, we'll do it. And I fixed the entire, this was unprecedented. They changed all the mixed event structures midway through the World Series. It had never happened before. Usually they'll say, well, these are the structures, you have to live with it or die with it. And I came up with something, and they went with it, and everybody liked it.
That's good stuff.
Like Jack Effel, who's very tough person to deal with sometimes. He said, "Allen, thank you. Like this is amazing." And then a couple of years after that, they went back to having bad again. But then this last year was really good. Like this one we just had in November. Excellent structures again. They fixed it again. And I said, Jack, I have a few little minor tweaks I'd like to make to these structures. And he said, well, we're not going to change it for this one, but for the summer, tell me what you want, and we'll try and do it. And he's already assured me that the stuff I asked for, I asked for double levels near the end of the day instead of earlier in the day, because at the end of the day, there wasn't enough play. And he said, you know what, you're right, we're going to try that. So,
nice.
I mean, people might think that that the tournament directors don't listen to what I say, but in actuality, there are a huge number of these tournament people where I've been at a tournament and made suggestions, and like at the Borgata, I said something to Tab one day, and he changed it right then as we were playing. Like he added, like we're on day 2 of a mixed tournament. I said, we're skipping levels on day 2 of a mixed tournament, and he said, you know what, you're right, and he went in and did something to the clock and he fixed it.
Well, that's really great, because it's very clear that it's not coming from a place of negative criticism, but more of constructive, and it's great to hear that they listen to it and make the adjustments.
There's been instances all over the country. There's only one particular tournament director who you probably know, but no matter what I say, it's not right. Like I've had multiple disagreements with them, and there's nothing I can do to change their mind. So,
and I think that's okay. Different strokes for different folks, and no need to get into that.
Other than that person, anywhere I go, like if I make a suggestion, they'll say, we'll try and get that done. Like even in Florida, where they've run really successful tournaments, I said, there's something with these mixed tournaments that there was something wrong with it, and I went to the top people in Florida, and they said, you know what, we're going to fix this for next time. And they wound up fixing it.
Well, it's always really nice to hear that, the folks running the tournaments, don't just have the blinders on, and they're always receptive and want to do the best for players. So it's a very good thing.
It's globally, I've had no issues with this, except for there's one or two people that no matter what you say to them, this is the right way to do it. Like we've been doing it this way. And that's their answer. We've always done it this way, and we haven't had any complaints.
Well, let's ask about that. Actually, I believe
some are like sheep. Like they don't care what's offered; they just want to play. Well, that doesn't mean it's right. You know what I'm saying? It could still be a bad structure, even though the people are coming out in droves to play, because there is nothing else to play.
I understand.
I understand. Play like a stud 8 tournament or whatever.
I understand. I kind of want to change gears, but kind of use that same line of thought. You said, doing things the way you always did. Obviously you've been around poker for so long as a player, and you've seen, the fact is the level of play has just gotten better across the board. You mentioned it earlier that, folks they know all the charts and all that sort of thing. Do you study or what do you do specifically to try and improve your game and I guess keep up with, all the geniuses who are just, studying in the lab all the time?
Well, I don't actually do this lab stuff, but I have studied the charts, like when to shove, when to 3-bet, those kind of things. Like there's certain tipping points in tournaments. Like if you have 15 blinds, you shove these hands in these positions. Mm-hmm. And I've studied those charts, and that really helped me a lot, because a lot of times I get short, and you just have to go with certain hands. It's been mathematically proven. Even if you bust, there's a mathematical certainty that if you have like 9-8 suited on the button with X number of blinds, you shove no matter what.
Right.
So those type of things I found very, very useful, and also just watching a lot of these high roller tournaments, and there's so much. Poker Go is unbelievable, the amount of content they have, and you can watch tournaments literally 24 hours a day and never run out.
Right.
So I watch a lot of the live tournaments and how people are playing, and you grasp onto things. Like I told Carrie, I said, Carrie, what you're doing for poker is just amazing. I said, nobody's ever offered content like this, where you can basically watch high rollers play. They have series after series at the Aria, and they're showing like final tables of all the different mixed events, the World Series, and all the different, every day they had 2 or 3 different events going at the World Series where they're showing live streams of people playing for life-changing money. I said, this is amazing. And, he just gets snubbed by the whole poker industry, never gets any commendation or anything.
Well, I think we try, but he kind of prefers to keep it a little bit on the down low. But he definitely does some amazing stuff.
Like, they're running poker awards last week, and like industry person of the year, I would put him in the running automatically. I mean, for the amount of content that he put out last year and growing the game and like offering all these different events, that people can watch.
Yep.
And
well,
he would have been a no-brainer for me to put in that group, like industry person of the year.
And perhaps an award is certainly in his future. Do you do any?
Basically, that's what I do. I mean, I don't really study like Sims and all this other stuff that people talk about.
Okay.
A lot of it is just people, playing the people that are at the table. And I have such an image that I can exploit that. Mm-hmm. And none of that stuff is even on any chart. It's just something you feel in your mind, like, if I raise here, they're going to fold because I have such a tight image, or I should fold here because they're raising me and I have such a tight image. Why are they raising me when I obviously have something here? You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So it's a little bit different for me than most other people.
I understand.
Because I have such an image and I have such a history that people play differently against me. So like you can't just use it like a standard chart or whatever.
Right. And when you talk about image, obviously there's people who've met you, know you in person, play against you at the table, and there's also the image that we kind of see virtually, so to speak, on social media. We know you're very active in the Twitter community, on numerous poker groups on Facebook, but I noticed you also have an Instagram page. And I'm kind of wondering, so who would you say is your audience there? What do you enjoy about Instagram?
Instagram, I basically just like post pictures of different hands and things. I'm not really too much into that Instagram. I don't, but when I do post something, it seems like people like it. Like I post when I had aces against aces at the, where was that? Oh, Thunder Valley, where I'm basically one of the chip leaders in the tournament, and the only other person that has the chips equal to me at the table has aces, and it runs out 4 to a flush. I took pictures of that hand, and that got a lot of response on Instagram. But I might go a month without posting anything on Instagram. Mm-hmm. So it's something. If there's like something, or if I have a big slot win or something, I sometimes take a picture of it, post it on Instagram.
Sure.
But I'm not really that big into it. So
okay, yeah, just more out of curiosity. I noticed it, so I wanted to ask. It's one other thing I wanted to ask you. You said you've always played on your own dime. Never taken from people. But it's of course known. When you play poker professionally, and it's the saying is it's a tough way to make an easy living. And you've had plenty of highlights. Plenty of great memories to reflect on. Have you ever had any kind of like massive downswings where you're like, man, maybe I should just, hang it up. Maybe I should just, I don't know, drop down. I don't know what to do with myself. Has that ever happened to you, or you just kind of like more or less smooth sailing?
No, I've never had that happen, because what happens is I do a lot of gambling on the side, and there's been some years where I win like 300 or 400,000 in cashes in poker, and I lose money gambling. But other years where I've done bad in in poker, I've done really well in gambling. Mm-hmm. So it just seems like those two things offset. Plus, I sell a lot of action on Stake Kings, so that reduces my variance a lot. Like if I win something big on Stake Kings and I have to pay out investors, it doesn't bother me because I get to play in the event. Like, I wouldn't normally play like 6 different 10K mixed events unless I sell some action. So I sell action at almost no markup, like 1.05 or something, just so I can play all the events.
Great.
So I limit my liability. I play the events I like, which are not that big a buy-in on my own, and then like in big series like the World Series or like 3,500 WPTs or whatever, I'll sell action online, even though I can more than afford to for years to play all these events. Mm-hmm. I just don't like to have the variance.
Sure. Well, that's good.
I never had a thing where I say, well, I'm going to be broke or whatever. I've always had plenty of money to do whatever I wanted, to travel wherever I want to go.
That's an amazing thing. I mean, obviously, you've lived your life. You know that that's sort of the way it's been. But that's very atypical from what we hear of so many professional poker players. And I think perhaps to a degree that's an example, at least to strive for and chase that stability.
I know several players that have had like $1 million years or $1 million wins, and like they're asking me to borrow money like a year later or something. And I can't figure it out. I don't want to name any names, but
sure.
But these people all have leaks. You know what I'm saying? Like they play in the wrong cash games that they shouldn't be playing in, or they play high limit table games where they have huge swings for no reason, or they gamble on sports. Sports is a big one, and I can't remember the last sports bet I ever made. So, but these people all have leaks, or they drink a lot and they just. They don't know what happened with their money. Like they'll just gamble wildly. So, anyway, I don't have any leaks. I play, very, very good selection of games. If I do play cash, it's a mixed game that I like. It's not what I call carnival games where they're just playing like double board this or with Dramaha, with all these crazy. I'll play like stud 8 cash game or Omaha 8 or mixed limit mixed game.
Okay.
But I'm also very selective, so I only go that I like.
Well, how about away from the felt, Allen? What do you do for fun?
Basically, I'm in the casino every day. So
why do you enjoy it?
I just enjoy the whole aspect of it. Going in the casino, walking around, deciding what to play, deciding, it's hard to explain, but seeing people that I know. So that's why I only go places where they have a casino. Like Jacksonville Best Bet, no matter what series they ever run, I have no interest in going there to play it because there's nothing I can do there. I'm going to go there. I'm going to play the tournament. If I bust, I have nothing to do there. So they're not going to have a mixed cash game for me. They're not going to. I have to pay for a hotel. I have to pay for my food. But if I go to like Choctaw or somewhere, if I bust a tournament, I can go in the casino. I can play slots. I can eat food. I can get comped. I can, whatever.
Nice.
If they have mixed cash games that I like, it's a completely different thing. So if Choctaw runs an event, I make a special effort to go to that. Same with Hard Rock Hollywood. I love to go there because if I bust, they have cash games that I like. They have slots that I like. They have a beautiful hotel. They have beautiful rooms. They have all kind of food that I like. So
nice.
I only go places where I feel comfortable.
And how about in Las Vegas? What are your favorite places to play? Obviously, everywhere there's a casino. So.
Yeah, I basically avoid the Strip at all costs. I don't really play on the Strip much. I like the M Resort because it's by my house. I actually like playing at the Venetian, even because if I bust, they have such a huge selection of machines there, and they have really good food there. The Wynn, not so much because the food is a little bit crazier there than it's like not my speed, but the Venetian, I really like their whole layout. Like the food, they have really good tournaments. They have a lot of mixed game tournaments, and it's easy parking in and out. It's just the perfect scenario on the Strip. Other than that, I don't think I've played at an event at the Bellagio or Aria. I think I played one event at Aria in the last 5 years.
Wow.
I can't remember the last event I played at the Bellagio because the last time I played at the Bellagio was a 10K 5 diamond, and I said I would never go back. So
interesting. Wow. Okay, well, I thought before we move in...
It was utter chaos there. There was like a 6-hour wait to get in the game, and you were afraid, like people were crammed in. It was, so I understand they fixed all that, but I haven't been back. So,
right.
But there's very few places that I play. Like I play where I'm comfortable.
Got it.
I can't even describe it.
Got it. Well, before we move into the community questions, I've just got one final question for you of my own, and I guess I kind of have to borrow it from Daniel Negreanu. He always seems to love asking you on his vlogs. What's bothering you today, Allen?
Well, I've been called down super light the last 3 days in a row at this Cherokee thing, and I've managed to lose all 3 times. Like today. It's pot limit Omaha. There's some limps for 600, and I have aces. They're not terrific aces, but I need to narrow the field.
Right.
So I'm in the small blind, so I make it 3,000 with aces. Now, the guy in the big blind has $600 invested, and he's got only around 12,000 in chips. So to put in 3,000 is a big deal for him. And he's supposed to fold, right?
Right.
Especially if he has 4, 7, 8, 9 rainbow in PLO. It's like a really, really bad hand. So anyway, he calls, and then what happens is because he calls, it starts a string because the other people are realizing they're getting a much better price. So then the next guy calls, and the next guy calls. And it winds up that the 4, 7, 8, 9 wins the pot. And
that's PLO for you.
Yeah, so that was, but I mean, this happened to me yesterday where a guy opens, and he opens for 2,500, and I shove for 16,000. And like, he's supposed to call, especially against me, with a really, really tight range, and he calls with a low to middle pair. And I'm thinking to myself, how's this even possible? Like, especially against me, like I've been sitting there for hours. I haven't made one out of line play, and this guy just decides to put in like 3/4 of his chips with the low to mid pair. I don't want to say the exact hand.
Gotta say,
and it winds up I have ace king of hearts, and I flopped pretty good, but I didn't make a pair, and he wins.
I got to say, I feel like I've been in that spot, and I'm sure many of our listeners can empathize.
No, it's weird because I built up this image over years and years, and people know that I have it. And like, if you look at the comments on Twitter, they say that people just call because they know I'm going to run bad and I'm going to lose. And it's happened to me for my whole career. Like, yeah. I've gotten aces cracked so many times in big spots. Like the last time I was here in Cherokee in the main event, I had aces and the nut flush draw, and the guy makes a set.
Right. So yeah, well, like we talk about, the folks who know you, and like I said, we've got a second segment of the show where we turn to our CardsChat community to see what questions they specifically submitted that they wanted to ask you. Folks, we do have a dedicated thread on the CardsChat forums for this, so as we announce who our future guests will be, please be sure to send in your questions. And Allen, the first ones come. We'll try to get through as many as we can. And again, thank you so much for your time.
I'll answer all the questions. I have nothing to do tonight, so.
Okay, well, I appreciate it.
Fire away.
Okay, so Chica Bonita, thank you very much. Chica Bonita wants to know, says, Allen, you're known as a versatile player. Which variant of poker is your favorite?
Oh, okay. If I had to answer that question, it would be like a mixed format, and it would either be Omaha 8 or stud 8, and triple draw limit, very close second. Actually, if those three are in a combination in a cash game, I'll almost always sit down after I scope the table out to see who's playing. But basically, those games don't even exist in cash games anymore. They're all basically these carnival games. But those three games in particular, I really like the nuances of those three games, especially stud 8 or better, because if you're playing no limit hold'em, anybody can beat you with any two cards. But if you're playing stud 8 or better and you're playing it well against people that are not playing it well, your edge is bigger in that game than almost any other game. So I tend to lean toward that game or Omaha 8. And I also like the nuances of stud 8, like trying to make somebody break their hand when you're either behind or ahead, or staying pat when you have the nuts, and not raising, and then they stay pat after you, or before you, or whatever. And there's just different nuances to each game. And those three games in particular are my favorite. But I'd say stud 8 overall is my favorite game.
Nice. Okay, cool. And the second question from Chica Bonita, many people praise your talent for phenomenal memory and ability in mathematics. Do you consider yourself especially gifted in these areas, and to what degree has this helped you in poker, she wants to know.
I've always been good at math. Like you can study, math applies to like video poker, it applies to regular poker. You can basically figure out, like, if I call in this spot, even if I hit my card, am I getting the right pot odds? Like, it just comes in your head automatically. But you have to be mathematically inclined to understand that. Like there's certain people where they're just saying, well, I have a straight draw, I have to call. But you have to think about it. What are my odds of hitting the card? Like, are all my straight cards live, or does any of them make a flush? Even if I make the hand, are there other cards on the river that can change the nuts or whatever? So it definitely pays to be mathematically inclined. As far as poker is concerned, I don't know. I hope that answers the question, but
I think it does.
It's something that you have to have innate in your mind. Like you have to. There's basically different formulas on the flop, turn, and river where you can figure out your exact pot odds of hitting something. So, like if you have a set, you usually have 10 outs on the river to improve or whatever. If somebody already has a flush.
Sure. Okay.
Like that.
Crystals has some questions for you, Alan. Crystals says you are ranked in the top 10 for all-time cashes, according to the GPI. What has enabled you to be so successful at tournament poker over your career?
Well, I had before like the last 2 or 3 years or so, I had a really good work ethic where I would play one series, then I would look on the cardplayer.com and I would pick out a next series. And I basically went week to week to week to week for 52 weeks playing whatever series was offered. And I had that work ethic for probably from like 2005 to like 2017 or 18 or whatever. So you can rack up a lot of cashes that way because you're playing hundreds of events. And if you cash in 1 out of 5 or I cash more than most people, but if you cash in 1 out of 5 of hundreds of events, you're going to cash 30 or 40 or 50 times in 1 year.
Yep.
So, and over multiple years, it just builds up and builds up. So that's how I did it.
There you go. Next question from Crystals is, what is something that most poker fans don't know about you?
They don't know that I have a talent where I can, if somebody gives me a phone number, I can tell them what word it spells, but it has to be a real word, obviously. And I've done this at multiple poker tables, and people have been very impressed by it. For example, like if you said 2274, that's the numbers on the phone.
Right.
I would tell you it's spelled cash.
That's a very...
But it has to be a real word, obviously. Like some people, they'll give me numbers that don't spell anything, and then like it defeats the whole purpose of the thing. But
so I could just pick 4 random numbers and you'd give me a word?
Talent by working with my sister, trying to find the numbers that spell different words. And it became like almost a language for me. So like people say, well, how do you do it? I can't explain how I do it, but it's just something that I can look at it. And not every time, but I'd say like 90% of the time, if somebody gives me the numbers that spell a word, I can tell them the word. And they're just, people are saying, you could go on the road with this and go to a bar and make money on this.
That's a really cool trick.
Nobody believes it. Like, and they'll give me sometimes they'll give me like an 8 or 10 letter word and I get it.
Amazing.
So like I was at the Players Club signing up in a casino in Black Hawk, and somehow that came up in conversation with the guy that was signing me up, and he said, "Oh, that's nothing. Anybody can do that." He said, "I'm gonna have my son do it." He said, "I'm not that inclined, but I'll have my son do it, and you'll see that it's not that big of a deal." Anyway, so I'm playing, and I go back to the same guy to cash out my ticket, and he said, "My son tried it, and it's impossible." And because I had done like 4 or 5 in a row with this guy,
right.
And he couldn't believe it. And he said, "My son tried it, and he's really, really smart, and he couldn't do it." So that's like nobody knows. I'd say 99% of the people that know me don't know I can do this.
That is a fantastic, very cool talent. Last one from Crystals. What is one?
Well, if you want to try one right now, you can look at your phone.
Yeah. And
you think of a word and tell me the numbers on the phone that match the word. Like if it was cash, it would be 2274.
Okay. So, oh man.
I'm putting myself on the spot, but I might not get it. But do like 5 letters or so.
Any word, you're saying?
Any word, but tell me the numbers on the phone that match the word.
Okay. 66639.
Money.
That's incredible.
See, people don't believe it.
That was really fast.
People don't believe that I can do it, but it's just like this innate talent that I have.
Very cool. Okay. One more from Crystals. What is one thing that you wish was different about poker? You're only allowed to say one thing.
One thing?
Yeah.
I wish when you go to an event, instead of it being like at most events when you go, it's going to be all no limit and one PLO event. I wish it would go back to like 2004 Bellagio, where you would go and every day there would be like a no limit event, but there would be some other event like a horse or a stud or a Omaha 8. And if it was like that, I would go all out to play, to like my old schedule. Like I would be going everywhere.
Nice.
Because the places that do that, there's only a couple places that do that. The Hard Rock in Hollywood, they've gone to that format a little bit, but where they'll offer a couple. But the problem is to commit to that, you have to go for too many days because they're spread out too far. The Commerce used to have that, but they kind of backed away from that. And basically, there's nothing like that during the year anywhere where you every day, instead of just having no limit, there's no limit other than the World Series, obviously.
Right.
There's no limit, and there's some other event. Like it doesn't. Everywhere you go doesn't have to just be no limit after no limit after no limit. Like if you look at like a Venetian schedule, they might have one or two mixed games, and every day they call it a monster stack or a gigantic stack or ultimate. It's the same tournament over and over again. It's just different numbers of chips.
Right. Now, I'm obviously a big fan of mixed games as well. I certainly second your opinion. I'd love to see it, but fact is, no limit definitely packs in the seats, and that's what the rooms are after. So, next one, Acid Burn FX got some interesting questions for you. Alan wants to know what is your favorite possession and why?
Possession?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't really have any. I have 3 of the circuit rings, but they're not really. They don't really mean that much to me. So I don't know. That's a tough one. I have to think about that.
Okay, we'll give you a time bank chip. It's good. Maybe we'll circle back. Next question from Acid Burn. What decision would you say drastically changed your life?
Oh, that's an easy one. It was the decision when I went to Las Vegas for the first time, and I saw, like, it just hit me like this is for me. Like I went there on a trip that I won, like a Super Bowl trip from Atlantic City, and it was like a revelation. Like I have to come here more often. I have to. This is for me. And eventually I wound up moving there. That was another big decision. But just the revelation of that I don't have to be in like cold Pennsylvania, for the rest of my life. I can go travel. I can go to Las Vegas. I can go other places. That was the biggest thing for me in my life.
Nice. Okay, cool. We've got time for 2 more questions here, 2 more question askers.
5 more questions. I'll stay on because I like these questions.
Oh, that's good. I'm glad you like it. Okay. So we'll do one more from Acid Burn FX. What mystery would you like to see solved in your lifetime?
The mystery?
Yep.
I don't know. That's a weird question. I'm not even sure what they're after there. I'll tell you one thing. There's certain players to me that are a complete mystery. Like I've played with them on countless occasions, and I can't figure out like what are they doing? Like it happens like every day. That's my main mystery. Like just the way certain people play, and people that you've seen for like 10, 15 years that are still doing this weird stuff that makes like almost no sense. And you think there's like a learning curve, right?
Right.
Like I'll give you an example. I have this mixed club online where people can play mixed tournaments we play from $100 to $200 mixed tournaments, $100 to $200 person mixed tournaments. It's been running about 3 years. We have say 20 to 30 people play a night on different tournaments online. If anybody wants to find out about that, they can message me on Twitter or Facebook. But anyway, there's people that have played since the beginning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's involving to me. They've been playing every day at our mixed tournaments. We run 3 tournaments a day, different games. Like we might have stud 8, we might have a deuce, we might have an 8-game mix one day, whatever. And they've been playing for 3 years, right? Every day with a nice group of people, and there's no learning curve. That like boggles my mind. How is that even possible? That's the mystery to me in my life. Like I don't understand. Like it's also like it applies to cash games and poker, right? There's people that I played like 20-40 with in the 80s or 90s. And then, I graduated to like higher games like 50, 100, 80, 160, 100, 200. And those same people are not only didn't they move up, they're playing 8-16 at the Orleans with the highest, this ridiculous rake. And I'm saying, how did this person for the last 20 or 30 years never get past $8 and $16 Omaha 8? It's a mystery to me. I can't even figure it out.
Interesting. Wow. Okay. I'll throw in one of my own here because I forgot to ask. It's something we always ask everyone on the podcast. Who are the friendliest players you've ever competed against?
Friendly players?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's quite a few. There's this lady Lisa Kaminsky on my Facebook. Mm-hmm. Every time I come to Cherokee, she brings me she brought me she made a custom made chainsaw T-shirt for me one time.
Oh.
She brings donuts. Her name is Lisa Kaminsky on Twitter. There's several others. I'm trying to think of something that someone nice done nice for me. Ben Irwin has been very nice to me. He's not a player. He's a tournament director at Thunder Valley, but you walk in and he'll take players out to dinner at the steakhouse, and it's just people that respect you or that are nice to you. But then there's also people that are just rude and mean to you, which I come into those type of people a lot. Like they'll say, how are you still playing as bad as you play? Like you're so easy to play against. And then I'll look up their Hendemob and they have 6 cashes in their lifetime for nothing.
Yeah.
Just want to be mean to somebody.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's both extremes actually.
I hear you. All right, we got 2 more here on the list. Belladonna 05, thank you for submitting this question. I think I know what it references, and I can't put words in their mouth, but Belladonna wants to know, Alan, just how many sodas have you shared with Todd Brunson?
Oh, that's a pretty funny story actually. So he had just bought the Cafe Roma Deli, whatever you want to call it, in Spring Mountain. Mm-hmm. It's actually a really excellent restaurant. They have really good Italian food, and they have people can go there. Actually, it's a little bit further from the Strip. It wouldn't be possible anymore, but from the Rio, it was pretty convenient. You could just drive down to Spring Mountain, make a left, and you're there. Anyway, so he had a grand opening, and they were doing a promotion where they were doing a drawing and having he invited all his friends to come down to the grand opening. So we get there, and they bring out all these different plates of all the different food, and I took some ravioli, whatever. Just there was shareable plates of all the different Italian food. So the waiter comes around and he asks people what they want to drink, right? I say, I'll have a Diet Coke, and then he walks around and he takes all the orders, right? So finally they do this drawing. There's an online drawing for I don't know what they were giving away, maybe meals at the restaurant or whatever. And finally, the thing's over. So everybody gets up to leave, and I thank Todd and Max Pescatore was his partner at that point in it, but I'm not sure if he's still involved in it. Anyway, I'm walking out the door, and the waiter almost tackles me as I'm walking out the door. I don't think Todd even knew about this. It was really weird, right? And I said, "What's wrong?" And he says, "You owe for the Diet Coke." I said, "Are you serious? This is a party. Everybody was invited to come here. This is the grand opening party. You can't charge people for drinks." He said, "Well, the food was free. The drinks you have to pay for." And I point to Todd and I said, make him, he'll pay for the drink. And I walked out without paying. Now, if you go there, you can find this picture online. There's a picture of me on the wall, and it says "Wanted Soda Thief," and it has my picture.
Amazing. That's a very funny story. Thank you for sharing it. And before we wrap up, one final question from Luvart. Luvart, thank you very much for sending this one in. A strategy question, Alan. Luvart wants to know, what are your 3 top tips for stud games, especially stud high and stud high low?
All right. Stud high and stud high low are completely different games. If you want strategy, like in a stud high game, there's a couple different strategies you want to use. Like if you're near the end of the circle, like the betting goes around in a circle. So if you're near the end of the circle and you have the highest card on the board, you should almost always raise, because first of all, that card, if you do have a pair, you have the highest pair, unless somebody has a hidden pair of aces or something. And second of all, the equity of everybody folding is such a big deal, because there's 8 antes in the pot, and you only have to get through 2 or 3 more people, and you often have the highest hand. Just king high might be the highest hand anyway. So you should always, always, always raise in that spot. And if you're the last person before the bring in stud high in particular, you should always raise, because that means your card is higher than the bring-in person's card, and you're getting like 8 or 9 to 1 on your money. It's like a ridiculous odds on your money just raising. Like I've seen people fold to the bring-in and stud, which is horrendous. You should never, ever do that. And if you're in early position in stud high, you want to play pairs. You want to play hidden pairs, which is way better than like if you have an 8-8 king is much worse than having king 8-8. Because if you have an 8 showing with 8 king in the hole,
right,
it's much worse than playing a king up with 2 8s in the hole. Because
sure.
The king up with 2 8s in the hole, you can represent kings, you can represent Broadway, you can represent a lot of hands. But the other way, you're basically saying I have a pair of 8s.
Right.
So you want to play pairs, you want to play 3 cards to a flush, you want to play any 3 Broadway cards. This is stud high.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when you're flipping the stud high low, a lot of people make this mistake in stud high low, is they'll play kings, especially with a king up. And kings are a disaster hand in stud high low, because what happens is people rate to have an ace in their hand, like they'll have ace 3-6 or ace 3-4 or ace whatever going for a low. And if they have an ace on board at some point in the hand, you never know if they paired that ace or if they made a low. But either way, you're in big trouble, because if they made a low, they're free rolling you with a low into a straight. And if they made aces, they've already got you beat high, and they're free rolling with a low draw. So kings are just a complete disaster in stud 8 or better. If you can play heads up against somebody and you can control the pot, it's fine. But multi-way pot, you're just going to get outdrawn by somebody with a straight or with a low. Or so in that game, you want to play 3 cards to low straights, 3 cards to low flush with a straight, ace XX with 2 low cards. But you don't want to play like hands like 3, 7, 8 that can't make a straight and that are going to make a bad low, because all that hand is going to do is get you in trouble. Someone's going to make a better low, someone's going to make a straight, someone's going to make aces up or whatever, and you're in a bad spot the entire hand.
Yep.
So those are my examples for stud and stud 8 of what you should be playing.
Excellent tips. And folks, besides everything else you've learned, if you want to learn specific strategy, definitely listen to the last few minutes one more time. Those are some great tips. Not that you need me to confirm it, but I enjoy a good stud game, stud high-low, and definitely some great stuff there. If you
look at the World Series, people that have cashed in the World Series, there are maybe 10 or less people that have cashed in every format of the World Series, and I'm one of those people. Like, I've cashed in every format except for single draw deuce. I've cashed in every other format, like limit hold'em, horse, 8-game mix, deuce, any game you can name, I've cashed. So it's really, really hard to do that. You have to really understand all the games, And there's very, very, I challenge people to come up with somebody that has cashed in more different variants. And it's very, very difficult to find it. Like, obviously, Phil Hellmuth has probably cashed in all the variants, or Danny Negreanu, or somebody like that. But it's very hard to find people that have cashed in every single variant. Like,
well,
so
your
you
record,
have to know all the games.
For sure. Your record certainly speaks for itself, and I guess that's why everyone sent in so many questions for, a lot of good questions to ask you, and thanks to...
You don't have any more questions to ask from the forum?
That's what we got. Let me just check one more time to see. No, I think that's what we got. We had about, 10, 15 questions in there. So, yeah, well, thank you to everyone who did send in those questions for Allen Kessler. And, of course, a friendly reminder out there to our Cards Chat community. We'd love to see you submit your questions for our future podcast guests in the dedicated thread. Please be sure, folks, to give us a good review on iTunes and spread the word via your social media channels if you liked the show. Allen, before we let you go, anything else you'd like to share with our audience?
Oh, I have a special offer for anybody that... Kerry's done an amazing job with Poker Go, with all that amazing content, and he's going to have, coming up at the World Series, he's going to have all the different final tables again, just like last year. There's also a Super High Roller Bowl coming up. If anybody wants to subscribe to Poker Go and get the lowest possible price, which is what I negotiated with him, all you have to do is type in the word chainsaw in the offer code box, and it'll give you the lowest possible price that you can get for Poker Go.
Nice. Well, you heard it here first. Great money-saving tips. Allen Kessler, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone out there, thank you so much for tuning in once again to another episode of Cards Chat. I'm Robbie Strazynski. You can follow me on Twitter at CardPlayerLife. I wish you all a wonderful day. Cards Chat, the friendliest poker podcast in town from the world's #1 poker community.